Just another reminder, we have the new microphone system, so before you speak tonight, and I know I'm not even being heard because I'm not obeying my own rule, but just as a way of educating everybody, before you speak, if you just tap the center button on the microphone in front of you. That's the only way the audio system's going to pick up your voice. So
Little red light's got to come on.
there you go, a little red light, and then we can have up to 4 of these on at once. So folks in the audience, when you come up to speak, just make sure you push the button as well. And I think the chairs will be on the whole time.
Center button, it lights up. This button lights up red too on it, right? Center button when you push it.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. Call the Zoning Board of Appeals meeting to order. By way of introduction, I will briefly explain the purpose of the Zoning Board of Appeals to the audience. The city has adopted a set of zoning ordinances. If a property owner applicant wishes relief for a portion of the ordinance, state law provides for an avenue of appeals, hence named Zoning Board of Appeals. The board must find 4 conditions to exist in reviewing an application in order to grant the variance. If all 4 conditions are met, the board can grant approval for a variance from the ordinance. The 4 conditions that must be met are: 1, extraordinary or exceptional circumstances which apply to this parcel alone. 2, preservation of rights that a similar zone parcel would have. 3, no detriment to adjacent properties. 4, the request is not in such a general nature that the ordinance should be changed. Unlike a decision by the Planning Commission that must be approved or can be overturned by the City Commission, the decision by the Zoning Board of Appeals is final. There is no review or opportunity for overturning by the City Commission. The Zoning Enabling Act provides a section 606, Appendix 3, an appeal from a decision of the Zoning Board of Appeals shall be filed within 30 days after the Zoning Board of Appeals issues its decision in writing, signed by the chairperson, if there is a chairperson, or signed by members of the Zoning Board of Appeals, if there is no chairperson, or within 21 days after the Zoning Board of Appeals approves the minutes of its decision. The court may affirm, reverse, modify the decision of the Zoning Board of Appeals. The court may make other orders as justice requires. We have some minutes that we need to have approved from, what is it?
Mr. Chair, I'll just
Go ahead.
mention, from staff standpoint, Andrea and I have taken a look at the minutes and we're making some minor formatting and
Okay.
spelling edits. So if you're comfortable with that, it's things like adding headers for the findings of fact, criteria, nothing substantive. So if you're okay
Okay.
with us going ahead and making those changes after the meeting tonight, we will
Okay.
do that.
All right, do we have to make a note of that or not? Or
Yeah,
what?
you could just say approve that with changes at the recommendation of staff, something
Okay.
like that.
All right, we need those with changes for recommendation from staff.
I'll make
Plus,
a motion to approve the minutes
Okay,
with the staff changes.
okay,
I'll support that.
all right. Tom made the motion, supported by Pat. Any other questions or comments on the minutes before I call for a vote? Hearing none, all in favor of the minutes, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same sign. Minutes are approved. We have a general comment provision. This provision is made to encourage the expression of questions and concerns regarding non-public hearing items and issues not on the agenda. Speakers are asked to identify themselves by name and address. A maximum time of 6 minutes per person is required. Okay, we'll go right into Waldorf. The applicant hereby requests permission to erect 1 internally illuminated wall sign, 8 square feet, on the west elevation of the building. The sign will be placed on the canopy above the customer's entrance. The above is contrary to the following section of the City of Walker zoning ordinance, Section 94-411. Address is 2001 Waldorf Northwest. Property's name is Jasper Enterprises, Tom Jasper. Property owner's address is 4719 Beach Ridge Northwest. Applicant's name is Valley City Sign, Stephen Kerr. Address is 5009 West River Drive, Comstock Park. Zoning district is ML. Use of existing premises, industrial. Use of proposed premises, the same. Owner states, for reasons and grounds for the application, exceptional or extraordinary circumstances, the customer entrance is located on the west elevation of the building. The building at 2031 Waldorf blocks visibility of this entrance and confuses the wayfinding of customers. A wall sign above the customer entry is needed to help differentiate the entrance for Andy J. Egan Company. B, preservation of rights. A variance is necessary in order for Andy J. Egan Company to mark and correct entry points for the customer. C, no detriment. The sign will not cause any ill impact upon the surrounding area, as it is only 8 square feet and it is not intended to be used to advertise motorists passing by along Waldorf Street. D, not a general problem. The conditions of the site are unique to the site and are not shared by many locations in the city. Access to customer entry is through the property on the west side and is the one level above the private entrance for employees of the south elevation, which has its own parking lot. A hill separates these two parking lots. I think we have the signs, the picture of the sign or the proposed on the canopy and the location here. Anything you'd like to add, Dan?
This is an 8 square foot sign, so there's not a whole lot to talk about, but I'll give a little bit of the site context and let the applicants speak, and I'll get out of the way. But here's the site. We're on Waldorf Street, pretty conventional industrial lot next to Waldorf Court there. You see a lot of smaller industrial offices and smaller industrial buildings. The zoning is ML, light industrial. Here's an image from the applicant showing what they're proposing to do with their sign layout. One item that's not necessarily for discussion tonight, but that's an interesting note about this property and should be addressed if it's not already, is the access to that side of the building is going to be different from the access to the front. So I presume there's some shared agreement with the neighbor or some way to get to that portion of the property. But as you can see, the main entrance for what they're looking to provide entry for is on the west side of the building, which is not the front wall. And in Walker, you have to have your wall signage maintained only on the front wall unless you're on a corner lot, which is a lot that's going to abut 2 public streets or two streets, public or private.
Okay.
So here's the scale of the sign being requested.
Excuse me.
8 square feet, like was stated in the application. This is an image presumably scaled up based on the actual building wall. So I just encourage you to still go through all your findings of fact for this case. There's still a case to be made based on what was described in the application for exceptional or extraordinary circumstances. There's a pretty exceptional layout of this site that you could consider in this case, with the entry being at a different part of the building than the other parking lot. Findings of fact for preservation of rights. There have been some fairly recent wall sign variance requests granted, not necessarily in this vicinity, but in industrial zoning in Walker for sure. So we have a 25 square foot wall sign that was approved at 3707 North Ridge in May of 16, an 80 square foot one. I believe this one was not illuminated, but still an 80 square foot sign at 3710 North Ridge in August of 17. So there are some cases that have been made for similar variance requests at other sites in Walker. Where it gets a little bit more interesting is the no detriment criterion. On the one hand, you have a very small sign that you're looking at, so if you're thinking in terms of visual clutter and visual detriment, there's probably a fairly strong case to be made that this really isn't going to impede the vision or circulation for drivers. It's not going to cause a hazard necessarily, but you do have to consider replicability and the precedent-setting aspect of this finding. So what would this look like if it was on every building to have a variance like this? Just something that you should consider when you're making your review. But again, if you go back to all these findings and you hone in on the uniqueness of this request, you might be able to get through this hurdle or get over this hurdle. And I just didn't even put anything on the screen for the not a general problem request, because I still think by and large it's a good idea not to open up the ordinance amendment process to allow sidewall signs. So if you can't get through that hoop of finding facts on exceptional or extraordinary circumstances or no detriment, you really shouldn't approve the request. But if you can justify those 2 points, I think the other points already speak for themselves. So you could conditionally approve the request. With a sign this small, I don't necessarily think it's important to put limits on the illumination as long as it's lit internally. If you do get to the point of approving the request. But again, I still recommend that you get through those findings one by one to make a sound decision either way.
Okay, we need a motion to open the hearing, public hearing.
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Sandra,
I'll support that.
supported by Pat to open the public hearing. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Pose same sign. The public hearing is now open. Anyone here care to speak to this variance?
Good evening. My name is Stephen Kerr. I'm the applicant representing Andy Egan Company. As you can tell from the initial presentation, this is a unique layout to the site, and I would actually like to make a correction to the application. The door on the south elevation facing Waldorf is actually dedicated for a separate company on the ground level. The topography allows for direct access to 2 floors. Each of those floors has a corresponding parking area. The ground floor having the entrance for the separate company on the south elevation, as well as a private employee entrance for their service for Andy Egan's service company, which is on the east elevation. The main customer entrance for Andy Egan Company is on the main floor, which is the second floor, and that is served by a parking area that's accessed through the lot to the west. And I believe they are under common ownership. At least that is what the Kent GIS is telling me. I'd like to speak momentarily about the replicability of the wall sign, the proposed variance. The 10 simulated replications that Dan provided, out of those, only 5 of the buildings have main entries on an elevation that does not face a street. 5 of them do have entries facing the street. Of the 5 that do not face the street, 2 have their own dedicated parking lot, and one of those has a wall sign facing the street adjacent to the entry, given the layout of the building. 2 of them share a single parking lot with each other that is clearly divided between the 2 buildings, and each has an entry to the parking lot on their own parcel. And there is ample room in front of the building by the entrance to that parking lot for a ground sign to adequately identify the building and the corresponding entry. And the other one is the lot that shares the parking lot with Andy Egan Company, but they do have a direct means of entry to their parking lot on their lot. And none of these locations share the same topographical challenges, nor do they feature customer entrances serviced by a parking lot, or you need to go through an occupied parcel. I'm available for any questions that you may have,
Okay.
as well as
Yeah, I'm
Beth
sure we
from
will.
Amy.
I'm sure we will. So anybody else care to speak to this variance? No? Okay. You might want to step back up there right now in case we need to speak to you or ask you some questions. I'm going to turn it over to the board for questions and review from the applicant. Anybody have any questions for him?
How long has he been in that building? Whoops. How long has he been in that building?
Andy J. Egan Company?
I'm sorry, I've never done this before, so.
That's fine.
I'm-
That's fine.
I'm here representing the company. We actually have 4 owners, and 3 of the 4 happen to be out of town, and one, it's her son's 5th birthday, so I'm gonna do my best to try to answer questions. So I believe we have occupied the building since the 80s. At that time, we did not take up most of that building. There were several other tenants within that building, and so we occupied just a small portion of that building. The owner of our company also owns the property. So over time, as the company has grown, the other tenants have exited, and we have continued to occupy more and more space of the building, and we now take up all except for one space of the building.
Okay. I need your name. for the
Sorry,
record.
my name is Elizabeth Jester.
Okay.
Has anything changed with that sign? I mean, it was probably there since the beginning of the building that you guys have been there. Has anything changed that,
With the size of the
Yes.
building? Yes, actually, so the office portion itself has changed in terms of occupancy. We've also added on, we have a fabrication shop that's expanded twice, so if you see the aerial footage of the building, you can actually kind of see the white space of the rooftop is where the building has been expanded twice to add on to it.
okay, thank you.
Anyone else have any questions for the applicant?
What's in the adjacent building there in the parking lot?
That is Evergreen Landscapes, which is, so the adjacent parcel is also owned by Jasper Enterprises, and they rent that building. It's a landscaping company.
Okay.
Dan, can I see the aerial view?
Do you have quite a bit of problem with
Thank you.
people coming to find out where the entrance is at?
Yes, that's exactly
That's
why
that's
we're doing this.
Okay.
Frequently, we have people going to that lower lot trying to enter the building that way. They get back in their cars and have to drive. If we have student groups, school buses will try to pull down in there.
Okay, all right.
So we do have that problem quite often.
Okay. So basically, what we're trying to do here is identify a directional sign for entrance. Does that serve 2 purposes? Is that what we're trying to
Yes,
do?
Yep.
Any other questions from the applicant? Well, we want to go down through the finding of the facts. If we do, then I have somebody make a motion to close the hearing. That's what we want to do. Got more questions or whatever? No?
If we have no more questions, I'll make a motion to close the hearing.
Okay.
Second.
Yep. Pat, supported by Brian. All those in favor of closing the hearing signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Pose same sign, the public hearing is closed. Okay, what we need to do is Go down to, for the reasons of the finding and the facts here. Extraordinary or exceptional or extraordinary circumstances for this piece of property, which I read already. Customer interest is located on the west elevation of the building. The building is at 2031 Waldorf. Blocks vision of this entrance and confuses the wayfinding of customers. A wall sign above the customer entry is needed to help differentiate the entrance of Andy J. Egan Company.
Now, question,
Go ahead.
is that sign coming down if another one goes up? Is that
What sign are we talking
the
about?
one on the,
On
that's
Walter,
blocked?
on
Yeah,
the south side of the building.
On the street side you're talking about?
the one that's blocked.
Oh, you'd have to ask them that. I need to step back up to the microphone a minute. The question is that the sign that presently is on the south side of the building? Is that correct? Is that what you're asking?
Yep.
Is that gonna come down or is that staying there? Is that presently being blocked or not?
Is there a visual in here so I can confirm we're talking about the right thing?
Best.
Well, is there any signage right now?
No, the only signage on that building is the lettering, the white lettering that's on the door.
Oh,
That we're talking about?
Sign above the customer entrance. Okay.
Okay. We got the question answered, so thank you. Okay. Any comment on that? Before we go on? That meets, huh? Go ahead. On the exceptional or extraordinary circumstances, finding a fact, the applicant, what the applicant states here for reasons and grounds?
I think it's probably accurate. I mean, it's somewhat of a self-created sort of a situation, but it's a really weird topography.
Right. Not too many people have their main entrances on the side of the building either. I can understand it's kind of unique. Okay, moving on. Preservation of rights. Variance is necessary in order for Andy J. Egan Company to mark the correct entrance point for customers. I think we basically covered that almost in the front one, right? Well, most entrances do have a marked area. C, no detriment. The sign will not cause any ill impairment or impact on the surrounding area as it is only 8 square feet and it is not intended to be used to advertise to the motorists passing by on Waldorf Street. I have to agree with that. Not a general problem. The condition of the site are unique to the site and are not shared by many locations in the city. Access to customer entrance is through the property to the west end and is one level above the private employee's entrance on the south elevation, which has its own parking lot. The hill separates these two parking lots. Those are the finding, or the general finding of facts, unless somebody has a comment or add or has a comment on those. You good with it? Okay. All right. So, if somebody wants to make a motion? This
I'll
time,
make
I
that
guess.
motion
Motion by Sandra for those reasons and grounds, Sandra?
for the reasons and ground previously stated, yes.
Okay. Supported by Tom?
Yes.
Or Tom? Okay. All right, any other questions or additions to the motion before I call for a vote? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Pose same sign.
Aye.
Right, one, Brian, okay? Motion is granted. It's approved. We gotta have a, who's got the signature deal tonight, okay? Andrea?
You could come up and sign.
Yeah, can you come up here and sign? Is Andrea here? You need a signature? Who needs to sign that? The sign company or the business?
The representative of the business would be best.
Okay.
I'm not an owner, so I don't have.
You're representing the
representing
business?
them.
Your signature. Okay, ready to go? The next one? Okay, next applicant. We have a, what do you, this is a lot split? Is that what we're doing? What is this, what are we doing here?
Well, we're looking, yeah.
This is not a zoning variance, it's a little bit different. This
Right.
is when there is a land division proposed that's gonna result in a irregular lot configuration. Our local land division ordinance, kind of borrowed with language from the State Land Division Act, says that we have to weigh in as a zoning board to assess whether we're comfortable with that.
Okay.
So it's a slightly different set of criteria that you, from what you use for a
Yeah,
variance.
Right.
So there's 5 findings you use for this one, and what you're looking at is a land lot depth to width ratio issue. And I can explain that more in my slides too.
Okay,
So,
all right, I just
thanks.
trying to get myself and the board kind of squared away with it, because it's kind
Yeah.
of different what we normally are.
There are 5 findings that are slightly
Yeah.
different from the ones for variance. Yep.
Okay. All right. The applicant hereby requests permission to, we would like permission to create a new lot for which the depth exceeds 4K, its width, 4 times its width at 3895 Mission Street Northwest, and we have a 1721 Justin. And is there another one involved in that?
3845?
Yep, 3845, correct. Mission. 3 lots total, right?
And the parent parcel is 1616, Kim, 161.
Oh, parent parcel, okay, parent parcel, okay. 1616 Kenny. Okay, as part of a property boundary adjustment request involving location of land from the existing lot at 1616 Kenny Avenue Northwest into 6 adjoining lots. The above is contrary to the following section of the City of Walker zoning ordinance 75-23C. Address is 1616 Kenny, and we got the 3845, the 3895 Mission, and the 1721 Justin. Property owner's name is Miedema Properties, LLC, Bruce Miedema. Property owner's address is 1865 Pine Ridge, Jenison, Michigan. Applicant's name is Jason Neal. Applicant's address is 3895 Mission Street. The zoning district is residential SANA, agricultural, is it SANA?
Just SA, I think.
SA, okay. Use of existing premises vacant residential, use of proposed premises vacant residential. Previous appeals are none.
I made an error. It is SA and A. on
Okay, I see
on
it
the other
noted
side.
here.
Yeah,
Okay,
you're right.
so, yeah,
Yep,
both,
those
SA and
those are
A,
2
okay.
forms of single-family residential zoning.
Got it. Okay. Describe how exceptional topographical or physical conditions on the land or the dimensions or layout of the parent parcel make compliance impractical. Building a road and creating lots through this parcel is challenging due to the existing wetlands on the east part of the property. There is standing water on much of the property for many months out of the year. Existing homes that border the property have experienced water issues in their basements. 2, describe how the greater depth to width ratio will be comparable with compatible and not adversely affected by surrounding lands. Are Plan allows for the east 6.4 acres of the parcel at 1616 Kenny to remain wooded and undeveloped, preserving wetlands and the natural appeal that this parcel has had for the surrounding homes. And it guarantees that no future development would exacerbate the water damage issues. 3, describe how the need for the greater depth to width ratio is not self-created. The only reason we need to create a lot that violates the ratio is because the resident at 1668 Stark could not afford to purchase a portion of the 1616 Kenny. Others therefore need to purchase a larger portion of the land, thus creating a lot that is too deep. Describe how the greater depth to width ratio for the particular parcels will not materially impair the intent and purpose of the City of Walker zoning land division ordinance. Our existing backyards will become larger and will define borders. No new development will occur and nature is preserved. 5, describe how the proposed parcels otherwise comply with all acceptable city ordinances and federal, state, and county laws, rules, and regulations. Each of the adjoining properties will abide by the city ordinances, state and county laws regarding the building and land use. And I think we have the pictures and whatever here. Anything you want to add now, Dan?
Yes, I will run through some context and some findings on this one. I think it's important to do that.
You want to open the hearing first, do you think, or not?
Sure, go ahead.
Somebody want to make
I'll
a
make a
motion to
motion.
open the public hearing?
I'll make that motion.
Scott makes the motion to open the public hearing, supported by Brian. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, hearing's open.
A typo. Let me make this correction while we wait. Not all that clear, but a little better. Okay. All right, thanks to the folks in the audience. I know that you've been at a few meetings with, in this room already in the last year, so one more time, maybe more, but we'll see how things go. Just want to give some context for our zoning board, who probably is not very familiar with this site. So this is the parent parcel that is the subject of what's being proposed here. The context is that this is a roughly 10-acre parcel that is off of the east side of Kinney, south of Remembrance, between the two legs of Stark Street, or Stark Avenue, that never were connected together. So it's been the subject of a lot of attention for a development proposal that I'll go over in the next slide here. This is the most recent, more intensive development plan that was proposed to our planning commission. This was from July 2018. And as you can see, this is about 18 lots on a, I'm sorry, 20, I got that wrong. I forget, I'm losing the exact number of lots, but it ended up being a significantly higher density. I think it is closer to 20 on just 10 acres of property. And so this plan is on hold. Technically, we have this plan tabled with our planning commission to come back with some more data for an updated wetland delineation and some more information on it. But this is what the most recent land use proposal was for this lot. So what you're looking at tonight is significantly different. What you're looking at tonight is the result of the neighboring property owners coordinating with the owner of the parent parcel to look at ways to reallocate this property into adjoining lots, and at least for now, in a manner that the colored portions of this map would not be developed on. So instead of having a development plan that plats or site condominium splits that property, you're going to have larger pieces of land absorbed into the adjacent parcels. And it doesn't mean that development would never occur under any circumstances. There's still a chance that one or two of these lots could punch a street extension through to a small degree, or perhaps the remainder lot on Kinney could have a small land division with a couple of houses there. That's all subject to its own review if that were ever to be proposed, but my understanding is that this proposal means that these lots would not be developed on in the foreseeable future. So another way to look at this, and I'm not sure if this is more helpful, but another way to look at this is the existing parcel fabric without any of the aerial imagery on the back of it, and the proposed. So you have this parent lot, land absorbed into the adjacent lots. Two of those lots are, I believe, unplatted from kind of the older country road sections of street, Justin Avenue and Stark Avenue on the north side, and then you have what's called the Old Mission Plat and the Mission Plat on the south side, taking some of that property on. So what you end up with is that 3 of the 6 lots that are gaining property are now going to gain too much in a sense. They're going to gain enough depth such that you have long runs of property and you're keeping the same frontage on the original streets. So per the 1997 Land Division Act, there are restrictions put in place so that you have lots restricted in their depth in relation to their width, so that there's not long flag lots and waste of land and odd development proposals where there may be a house stuck way behind another house where it's difficult to get an emergency vehicle back there. Things of that nature are, I think, more the intent of that land division rule. But as it lies, that rule is in place, and there's a restriction on depths not exceeding 4 times their widths. And based on scaling this drawing that was given to us by the applicant, that 4-to-1 ratio is exceeded on these lots by the amounts that you see here. So 1721 Justin has a 60-foot frontage at a dead end on Justin Avenue, over 500 feet of depth, so you're somewhere between 10 and 15% as opposed to the 25% ratio that you need. 3845 and 3895 Mission are absorbing a little bit less than that, so they have somewhere between 400 and 500 for the 3895 lot, and somewhere between 300 and 400 for the 3845 lot, with frontages roughly around between 80 and 100 feet. So you get the same issue with the 4-to-1 ratio being violated once these properties take on more land. So what do you have to look at to justify something like this? You have to look at whether the split is the result of some exceptional topography or physical conditions on the site. Is there a reason that you would want to configure your parcel layout in this way due to physical constraints on the underlying property? And I think there certainly is a case for that here. You have wetlands that have pretty expansive coverage that we still don't know the exact scope of where those wetland plants are growing and what part of this property is inundated year after year, but it's certain to be a large portion of the eastern end of this site, as we found through our planning commission discussions. And you can even see a seasonal creek kind of there at the dead end of Stark from the south. Mature tree cover, I think those are all things that feed into this narrative of the original land being exceptional in some of its characteristics. Second one, whether the greater depth to width ratio will be compatible with and will not adversely affect surrounding lands. There are a lot of tangible benefits to maintaining undeveloped land, mature tree cover. It intercepts stormwater. It provides a buffer and natural beauty. And I think the evidence is also supported by the fact that you see a small crowd here tonight as opposed to when this was proposed for development. Some of the folks have probably a pretty good sense of how much value those trees provide to the adjacent land. So in that sense, I think just maintaining some open space in this part of town is a benefit to neighboring properties and is compatible with, provides some compatibility with this proposal among the adjacent properties. Is this self-created? This is a tricky one. So the way that I would look at this and the way that I do look at this is whether this type of a land division is made with the intent of developing and economically benefiting off of this kind of split. In this case, you're looking at no net gain in the number of lots. That's an important thing to keep in mind. So you're not looking at a development plan that takes property and carves it up in an irregular way and works against some self-imposed constraint in doing so. It's really more of a land preservation aim, which I think is more consistent with the intent of this code, and it's not really a self-created problem for the purpose of development. So I think that I can check the box on this criterion as well. Whether this proposal materially impairs the intent and purpose of this article, and if you look at the Land Division chapter that this came from, and it's reflected in the State Land Division Act 2, I believe, the intent is to minimize potential boundary disputes, to maintain orderly development, and to otherwise provide for the health, safety, and welfare of the residents and property owners of the area and of the city. And in this case, you can judge based on what you see here and from the testimony of the applicants, but this has been a cooperative process among the neighboring property owners. By virtue of this being a shared application among 7 people, this is cooperative, and there is a likelihood that this is going to be something that is acceptable to everybody in the area if it remains undeveloped or developed very lightly with accessory building here or there. So I think that combining this land in a manner that preserves tree cover, preserves undeveloped open space, is consistent with the intent and purpose of this article. The last one is whether this will comply with all applicable ordinances in federal, state, and county laws, rules, and regulations. This is assumed for now and will be verified at any point in a review process for any type of activity on these lots. So I think all we can do with this criterion is to provide assurance that, save for this land division rule, we'll bring the appropriate local, county, and state rules into the fray if they come up as part of a proposal to build something like a shed or a pool. We'll work with the appropriate agency to make sure that that's not being proposed on a wetland or impairing some other law or rule. At this time, it looks like the best option for any of this property is to just leave it alone, by and large. But if there is a proposal to develop on it, we'll make sure that it adheres to all the applicable rules. So those are the 5 findings. I encourage you to use a motion that responds to each of those 5 findings. And if you agree with the underlined ones on your motion sheet, then you can check the box on all 5 of those and support this application. I will say a couple of recommended conditions. And I think as long as it's clear enough in the record tonight that this is still not a professionally surveyed plan, it can be acceptable for the ZBA to not know the exact dimensions. You know that what you're considering is a 4-to-1 violation. There may be some give and take on the final number. So I guess what I would ask is that you, of course, ask for a formal property division and combination of these lots, so you aren't leaving leftover landlocked parcels, and that this does go through the appropriate channels of the land division application. And in doing that, we'll get official sealed surveys from a surveyor. So I ask that you condition any consideration of this on the sealed surveys, and that in doing so, you might find that the numbers as roughly estimated in the notice may be off by 10% or so on the depth. I don't assume they will. I assume they'll be pretty darn close. But I just ask that you consider that leniency in talking about this. And then, of course, if you want to, it's within your right to table to review the final survey paperwork if you want to get some more information once that's done. But I think it was important to get some assurance to the applicants on your overall sentiment towards this proposal before they go ahead and complete all that survey work, which has a cost associated with it. So I recommend that you could either conditionally approve or table if you want to see those surveys in completed form.
Okay. Any of the applicants like to speak to this? Need your name and address for the record, please.
Hi, my name is Jason Neal, and 3895 Mission Street.
Okay,
I don't really have anything else to say. I think
Okay.
it looks like it was pretty well presented and stuff, but if you guys have any questions
Okay.
or anything, I'd be happy to answer those.
I'm going to turn it over to the board for questions, if they have any questions for me. Have any questions, board members? Go ahead.
The application said there were a fair amount of water in the basement sort of issues, or in certain areas.
Oh, yeah, this has been proposed, I don't know, Dan, how long have they been trying to build there?
At least one time before I was on Walker's staff,
Okay.
10 years ago, and then, or 12 years ago, and then 2 or 3 times in the last
Yeah,
year.
so
last
there's
couple
some
years.
water issues, both north and south, on Mission there. And that's why the place was filled several times when, and so we approached the developer, and he's willing to sell, and we just kind of keep it green, and I guess we end up with bigger backyards, but it's kind of the plan.
Kind of preserve the water, more water coming on you.
Yeah, we don't want to create weird things.
Anybody else here want to speak? Name and address, please.
Hi, I'm Jean King, 3845 Mission Street. My husband Don and I are residents of Walker. We've been in our home 22 years now. So I was actually on the original trail committee to build the bike trail that's right behind our house there. So we've been here multiple times with the proposed development, just discussing about the water issues, and right currently behind our house, it's a huge wetlands. I think where we're at with it right now, and we've had some conversation, a really good conversation with the owner of the property, and he's recognizing that this is nearly an impossible parcel of land to develop, and he was willing to chat with us about price, and we got the neighborhood all together to sit down at the table, and we all talked about it and said we'd all like to purchase a chunk of that property. Everyone is completely committed to keeping it green space. None of us have any plans to do any developing or building of that, so we've all made that commitment to him. So we're looking for your approval, with the variance, and so that we can move forward in our conversation with the owner of the property.
Okay. Any questions from the applicant? Guess not at the moment. Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay, if you are not done with the questions, Tony, you want to make a motion to close the hearing?
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Brian to close the hearing,
Support.
supported by Tom. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Pose same sign, it is closed. Okay, Dan's went through quite a bit of this in detail, and through all the conditions and whatever. I think, I'm just going myself, I'm thinking that we pretty much addressed everything that's on this criteria that we have to meet, so. So I guess it's up to the board, whatever you want to do. Do you want to go down through the findings that, if you're going to make a motion, or the findings that we have from the applicant good? Or do you want to add things or not? I guess that's what we need to do, okay?
I, for one, think they're good. I like the fact that they want to keep it a green space and the wetlands where they are and the natural beauty that's there with the trails that are so close by. So I would be in favor.
Okay, with the conditions that Dan stated, with that, can we pop that back up, Dan?
With a conditional approval. What is a formal property division and sealed surveys and all of the above?
Okay.
Yeah,
With
and
the
I put the 10% rule
10%
just to
rule.
give a little bit of leniency.
Little fudge there?
If you're comfortable with it, so that this doesn't have to come back to the ZBA if the
Right.
final survey number
Right.
kicks
Okay.
out something different than what we scaled this
All right.
as.
Right.
And I would second that.
Seconded by Brian. Any comments or questions on the motion before I call for a vote? Those conditions? All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Pose same sign. Pat? One negative, Pat. It is approved. I need a signature. Andrea here. Just one signature cover everything? I don't know what's going on here, so. Okay.
The owner, the applicant was one of the co-owners. and he
Yeah,
can sign
okay,
for it,
gotcha.
so, Yep.
Okay, well, good luck. Thank you for your time. All right.
Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Yep. You're getting ornery over there,
Of course, you know I'm kidding.
Okay, anything we need to know, Dan?
Nothing on the horizon. We'll keep you posted for the next variance that is variance application that's turned in. I
Okay.
did want to, looking at the wrong screen here, but I wanted to just alert you and remind you, I think I mentioned a couple weeks ago, there are some training opportunities on the horizon, so we
Okay.
certainly support training. Every one of these cases is a little unique and they can all be a little weird, so it's good to know the basis for why we have things written the way that we do and how we make decisions the way that we do. So I just want to pull up the slides here because in addition to the training that I told you about a couple weeks ago, there's another one that has recently surfaced. So there's the Michigan Association of Planning trainings, and then there's the Ottawa County Planning and Zoning Fundamentals training. I think that Ottawa County one's coming up a little bit sooner.
The Ottawa County one?
Yeah. And, my internet's.
I've found that most all of them that I've ever went to, I think the Ottawa County one, myself personally, is the better one to attend, so,
I think that's the one that I went to,
yes.
was Ottawa County.
Yeah,
Me too.
I went to 2 last year.
yeah, it's pretty informative out there. I think it's, like I said, I've been to a lot of different ones, but I think that's probably the best ones.
Well, registration's open and it's 2 Thursdays from tomorrow, so if you're inclined to go, I strongly encourage it and we'll encourage you to, and it's free, so you don't even have to ask us for a credit card number or anything, so you can go to that one, or if you are interested in one of the MAP sponsored trainings, you can ask about that as well. I've had good experiences with both
Yeah,
trainers.
yeah. Who does the other one that's not in Ottawa County?
Different professional planners in the Michigan Association of Planning, Kurt Schindler, there's a couple of other ones that,
Okay.
yeah, Andrea and I have both taken advantage of some of those, and they're very helpful.
So what do we have on the horizon?
Nothing that we know about. Couple things that I'm having conversations with developers who may turn some part of their project into something you'll have to review, but I don't know yet. We'll keep working through that kind of stuff. And remember that often there are a lot of conversations like that don't end up here. We often filter some things, and
Right.
by the time folks show up here, they usually really, really want it. So.
And that's a good thing.
Okay. Anybody care to make a motion to adjourn?
Everyone wants to stay late? I'll make that
Brian-
motion.
Brian makes that motion.
Support.
Supported by Scott. All those in favor of adjourning, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right, we are adjourned.
Right around the corner, I do too.